Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Raw is Ginger. This video is brought to you in association with Dubby Energy Blend. Use the coupon code GingerMediaLimited to get 10% off your next purchase. Link in the description.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Raw is Ginger, and as you can see, we have our Ginger back.
I'm back. I also apologise in advance because I'm still not well, and I have taken not only my mental health meds, which are the new meds, I've also had to take paracetamol and brufen. So I might end up high as balls during this. So, because the last time I did that, I got fascinated with the letter Q. I just started looking at it, and then that's when I realised that I was high. So
it'll probably be more entertaining than it is any other week then. So fingers crossed.
Well, in fairness, I wasn't there, and fuck me, guys. It was like a mortuary sometimes we used to talking. So many gaps I had to edit. Christ almighty. You know what? You know what, Jest anyway. Like, he's done well. He's done well. Good on you. But well, I was like, hurling my ring. So he's did good. Well done.
I mean, the thing is that what we had to speak about, it was like, I mean, it was better than WrestleMania at least.
Yes.
There was some high points.
There was quite a lot of tangents as well.
But it also did make me think.
Me and Kev could have sat there all night.
I could tell when I was editing. But it also made me think, you guys gave higher ratings on that show, that one show where I was not doing the kind of guiding through, than any other ones we have covered. So I'm like, am I just the guy that turns up and you all just go, it was shite?
I mean, pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is the only one where they're not ripping the piss. But speaking of ripping the piss, we're going to be talking about ECW.
Yep.
Well, because, yeah, well, we kind of are and we kind of aren't, because there's been a lot of chat. There's been a lot of chatter lately, as Kev had pointed out, is that people had made comparisons to AEW, saying it's basically ECW 2.0. Well, because we don't count the WWE version for lots of reasons. So
it was shite.
Yeah. So but it did get me thinking. There is a talking point here. That's something that we probably should discuss. Do you guys think that AEW is just becoming the new ECW? And if not, why not? Or if so, why so? So I thought, well, I don't know much about ECW. Toner does. I don't know much about AEW. Kev does. So okay, let's kind of make it essentially like what it was with Super Fights. We'll have Kev kind of argue the point for AEW. We'll have Toner argue the point for ECW. I'll decide whether I think that is the case, that AEW is like ECW or it's not. We all cool with that? I know I kind of sprung it on you just there. Like, you'll probably have your points for and against anyway, but it'll be good to hear from both sides.
Yeah, that's fine.
No.
Coolio. So what we'll do is, since Toner had taken up a lot of the conversation in that in the last episodes, I'll let Kev actually get a chance to speak, and especially because Kev had sourced the question for us anyway. Do you think that AEW is the new ECW?
I don't think it's the new ECW. I think what they've done is they've taken all the good things that came out of ECW and they've said, that worked, we'll try that. Anything that didn't work, they've decided we won't go down that route, we won't do that. That failed miserably. We won't have anybody being like that type of character. Because you look at the parallels, they've got similar characters coming in. And then you've got people like John Moxley, Kenny Omega, and Chris Jericho, the Young Bucks. These people propped up the company. And obviously Cody Rhodes at the start. These people propped it up. They were big names. They were a big draw. ECW didn't have a big name when they started. It was an independent company with indie names. essentially, AEW done the same. They went to all the independents. They went to Japan. They went to all the other smaller companies. They had their big names that would draw the people in, but they'd be watching these other fights before you even got to see the big ones. And that's what ECW done. They built up stars so that you would come to see those people, but you would watch the other people before. Taz, when he started in ECW, he wasn't a big draw. But Paul Heyman said, he is something. And they built him up and they built him up. When he came in, he started on like the first 2 matches. And it was like that for about 6 months. And then people were like, this guy's amazing. And then they built him up for that because they wanted to build him. And that's what AEW seems to be doing. They're building people up. A lot of the time it's not working because some of the people, they've just not got it in them. They don't have the promo skills. They don't have anybody training to do promos. If they had people in do that, I think then it could supersede to where ECW was after like 5 years. And they're at that stage just now. It's been about 5 years. And they're getting there, but I don't think they're pushing it enough.
At the same time, AEW has something that ECW did not have: money. And a lot of it. And they have also a decent commentary team because people actually want to hear, still from good old JR. They've got better venues, better resources, and kind of bigger pool, whereas ECW didn't have that. So do you think, like Toner, that was kind of the charm of ECW, that they were like the proper outsiders?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. If you look at ECW, it was just Raw. But I don't mean Monday Night Raw. I mean, it was just Raw. It was just pure Raw. It was just, guys getting out, making the best of what they had. Everybody trying to supersede what somebody had done the match before, the week before, the night before, trying to get that big spot, that big kind of talked about spot, wanted to go over by doing that. And it worked because, fans get right into the kind of extreme hardcore element of it. These spots, these matches, what was going on in it, everybody get into it. I mean, I would kind of think, looking at AEW in comparison, being that it's, for me, a lot more along the lines of trying to be more like Attitude Era WWE, as opposed to that. Because, and again, I mean, you look at the nature of stars that they've brought in, they've got a plethora of huge names. They've all these kind of guys, all this list of talent that they've got. I mean, it must be difficult to continue to use that week on week, which it's proven to be.
Yeah.
You see some amount of guys at times, sitting on the sidelines, not having big stories, a lot of kind of stuff going on backstage and things. But I think when you look at it in the comparison to ECW, I think in the odd match you probably can compare certain elements or a spot that's happened or something. But again, you can kind of do that with WWE. Certain things happen that historically and maybe up until now, which is kind of ECW-esque, if you like.
Yeah.
But I don't think the overall show is like ECW. I think there's a few similarities to it, but I don't think there's enough to be saying, it's going to be the new ECW. I think they're trying to go for, with WWE going through a kind of PG era, you feel like they're trying to get that audience that's kind of untapped, if you like, the non-people, the kind of adult audience, the kind of original wrestling fans, and bringing big names over is a massive help in that, because names are draws.
Yeah.
When people wanted to tune in to see CM Punk debut.
Well, the question that I've got, from my kind of outside point of view, I see it as having a lot of shades with WCW rather than ECW. Rich guy, bringing it in, lots of big names jumping ship. The backstage politics is rife. Internal bust-ups, not being able to manage the guys they bring in effectively, aka CM Punk, which was kind of what was similar with, when they brought Bret the Hitman Hart in. They didn't know how to manage him. Well, it also has more of the platform and more of the resources, but at the same time, it also isn't kind of using it to its full potential. I mean, as much as the WCW commentary team, I thought was below par. Well, they still were much better than ECW's. ECW's was just we don't need a commentary team. Let's just watch the carnage. To me, it feels like the only real comparison to ECW that AEW has is it's a lot more bloody. Whereas WCW didn't have that. So do you think people are maybe having more bias about saying it's like ECW because there's been so much kind of blood and gore in it compared to what, for example, WWE or WCW have? Kev, I'll float that question to you.
Well, I think, like Tony was saying, they're trying to tap into an audience that zoned out when WWE went PG, because it just slowed everything down. It was all mostly talking. You would get 4 or 5 7-minute matches in a 3-hour show, and then the rest of it's promos and interviews. And it's that's not why we watch wrestling. We want to watch the wrestling. We want 4 or 5 7-minute promos, and then 12 or 13 10, 15, 20-minute matches. That's why people watch.
Yeah. And maybe having a couple of squash matches in the middle as well, just so you're right, they're building these guys up as the powerhouses. So we'll get them in a couple of squash matches out the door.
But with ECW, the only promos really were always done by Paul Heyman.
Yeah.
And he could keep a crowd. He could come out and do a 50-minute promo, and people would be glued to their seats.
Oh, yeah.
For that 50 minutes. And they would
you
not
guys know
even
how much I love
realise.
Heyman. You guys know that I worship Heyman's promo skills and his mic work and his command and his stage presence, and ring presence in that sense as well. I really admire that. Whereas I think I'm going to float this one past to you, Tony. Tony Khan is a lot more active and being out with the audience and engaging than, for example, it was when it was a WCW or even early WWF before the heel Vince was finally realized. Do you think that's a positive or a negative? Do you think that Khan should just stay away from being the on-air presence, or do you think it's more of an advantage because we get to see the face behind the billions?
I think it can be looked at in two fronts. It's the persona that he wants the fans to see of him. And that's what it is. Do you want to be that guy that comes out, that interacts, that gives good news, that tries to give good news and get pops, and be the guy that's, getting that feeling of all these people cheering because you've made an announcement and feeling great? Or, the way that, as we all know, Vince done it back in the day, he had periods of being cheered. He had periods of being booed out the building. Whatever character and whatever persona that character was perceiving and playing was what he expected to do. You know what? Do I think it's hindering anything there? Probably not, to be fair. I think the kind of hindrance probably goes more on, because what happens on camera, a lot of is based on what's going on off camera. Because we all know it's scripted. They know who's winning matches. They know where storylines are going. They know what they want covered. So a lot of it.
We have to include a little spoiler alert for any ones that have the hashtag kayfabe is alive, because there's lots of them out there. They think the kayfabe is still real, so we have to like just give you guys a spoiler alert. You might need to smell a coffee in this one. But it is an interesting thing, like when you're saying about Vince and you're saying about that type of style. Who do you think is trying to be more like Vince McMahon, Eric Bischoff, or Paul Heyman?
I mean, I genuinely don't think he's trying to be any of them. I think he's trying to be the lovable money man. The guy that everybody loves and everybody cheers for. I feel a lot of the time that's the character that he's trying to play. Where Vince, especially back in the day, he would see it as an achievement, not just for him, but for any kind of wrestler or manager, any worker for him. If you were a heel and you get booed out the building, that was a plus. That's what you wanted.
Oh, yeah.
If you were a face and they cheered you out the building, that is just as big an achievement as being booed out the building. And he took both the kind of character types on very well. I mean, there's very few people that were hated as much as Vince McMahon was hated back in the days. When you're looking at kayfabe, there was few people that were hated as much as Vince was despised and booed out the building.
Yeah, and I always found it so interesting because it went from being, him being the devil himself, and then they had the invasion storyline, and I was like, this guy's been an absolute knob jockey for the last few years. How is he going to make this turn? And we still rooted for him. And we rooted for him literally up until the day that Ric Flair turned up. And then it was like, okay, right. And then we went back to being, it's like, all is well. He's back to being an asshole. We're cool. Well, and I think that's a skill. I think I think he might have learned that for Heyman, because there's points where you're like, Heyman can be a douche, but you love him because he's so good at it. But then he's
been doing this stuff since the 90s. When Sergeant Slaughter, when he started, he was the good guy. And then when they put him with Colonel Mustafa and the Iron Sheik, he was an Iraqi sympathizer.
Yeah, that was fucking risky.
There was letters and phone calls to Vince personally saying, if you don't fire him, we will burn down the office. We will find your house. We will find Sergeant Slaughter's house, and we will kill yous. And he phoned Sergeant Slaughter saying, we've done it. Because that's the reaction he wanted.
Yeah,
and it's
definitely.
Like, when you go down that route and you're getting death threats, because this is when kayfabe was real at the time, everything that happened was absolutely happening.
Well, pre-social media.
Pre-curtain call.
Pre-Dave Meltzer.
Dave Meltzer was always that one I just never believed anyway. I still don't.
Nah. These threats were coming in, and he's like, we've done it. We've made it. And that's what he'd done to build up heels. He's like, this was the first real heel that he had a hand in fixing up. And he's like, we've done it. We've found how to do a great heel. We know how to build up baby faces. We've done it with Hogan. Because when he started, he was a heel. And like the 70s, when he debuted, he was a heel. People didn't like him. But then people were like, oh no, we like him. And then they started to cheer him. And it was Vince that said to his dad that we need to build him up as a babyface. And then we need to find somebody to be the heel for him. And they found plenty. They found plenty. And then that's when Vince Sr. was like, right, well, I'll sell you the company and you can take it on. And then we know where we got to.
Yeah, the rest literally is history. At the same time, that magic that he had did start to fade, especially when you get to the Cena and Reigns eras, where he was like, these guys need to be the good guys. Cena more successful than Reigns. Reigns everybody just wanted to boo him. And it was just, and it took a global pandemic to make them realize, okay, we boo him now. And one of the things when we're driving it back to the ECW kind of point, we all remember like when it was like the three rounds with Cactus Jack and Terry Funk, and when it got to the final match, everybody throwing the chairs into the ring, like ripping the chairs out of the arena and just flinging everything when the chairs were gone. There is no chance in hell, to quote Vince, that AEW would A, be able to do something like that because they're in stadiums, and B, get away with it, especially with the way things are nowadays. So why do you think that people think AEW is the new ECW? Do you think it is really just the blood and gore? Because they have more shades of WCW for me.
I personally think it is just because of the sheer amount of brutality in their matches, because they're not shying away from the fact that these 2 people or 4 people are in this match to beat the utter shit out of each other.
Yep.
And having been in a few fights in my life,
that's what
you take a punch, sometimes you get cut and you bleed. And it doesn't stop if your adrenaline's going. So people are wanting to see more of that because they've been denied this with the way that WWE is, even with the way that Impact and Ring of Honor was. They sort of took on the no blood policy, and they said that if it happens naturally, then that's fine. But we're not going to actively blade or that.
Yeah.
Whereas if in the AEW matches, it just depends on who it is. Obviously, John Moxley goes into a fight, he's going to cut himself home. Guaranteed. 9 out of 10 times, he's going out with a cut right across there.
Yeah. But the question that I've got is, there's reasons why there's no blood policies. Yeah. And again, I don't mind if it's like, if it is an accidental thing. Like, for example, Nia Jax is a walking disaster area. What she done to Becky Lynch, busting her up. Like Brock Lesnar, Cena, Brock Lesnar Orton ones when they busted them up and you didn't know if it was a work or a shoot or anything like that. I personally think that if an incident like that happens where it's not intentional, but it happens, fair dues. But I've always had a thing where it's like blading to see blood, what is tapping into type of things that really we've moved on from over the course of the years. So do you think, maybe, Tona, it's a bit too much blood and gore that's going on at AEW? Because there's times I look at photos and I'm like, holy hell, what is going on here? Like seeing Lesnar at Backlash, I was like, okay, he took a doing with that one. It was not intentional, but the blood was there, and it's a fair dues kind of thing. But every week I kind of look at stuff for AEW, and so I'm like, right, who's busted open this week?
Well, the thing is, it's all about the shock factor. And the Lesnar one, they came out and said it was intentional. But then I suppose the thing is, you're going to come out and say that after the event's happened.
Yeah.
You're not going to say, oh, yeah, that was an accident. It's easy to say, oh, yeah, it was an accident. We move on from it. Or it was meant. We knew that was going to happen. Let's go. Because it's easy to cover your tracks by doing that. But with AEW, yeah, sometimes I think it's, you want to have, I think, that element of, wow, that shock factor. If you get, you imagine 10 matches in a card and 9 of the matches finish bloody. The kind of impact in the shock factor, it's gone.
Yeah.
Because it then just becomes expected. Whereas I think the key is for it to be done to the right people in the right circumstances in the right match. So I think, personally, whether it was intentional or unintentional, Lesnar being busted was a great piece of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for me an absolute. If that was intentional, then that's a tremendous piece of work.
Yeah.
But when you look at AEW and you put it on and you're going, up, right, there's more blood. They're getting to the 4th match in and the fucking ring is just dripping.
I know.
And at times.
Yeah, and a lot of the time it doesn't add any value for me.
No.
Like, because for example, like the CM Punk matches when he was there, like, and you'd see him like and he'd be blood soaked. It looked awful. It just looked he looked even more nuts than he actually is, which is maybe something that we're trying to go for in some cases. But John Moxley looks like he's been like just totally destroyed. You look at him between what has happened, like his time WWE and his time now in AEW. He doesn't look like the same guy. He looks like he's aged about 30 years. So in some ways, I think, yeah,
It's because of the sheer amounts of blood loss and the
exactly.
amount. I mean, you can see all the scars
Yeah,
from where he's bleeding.
his forehead looks like New Jack. Well,
It's worse.
yeah,
He's going to end up like Abdullah the Butcher with
yeah,
all the scars right up here.
mm-hmm.
I mean, his forehead genuinely looks like my boss.
Well, when this will be going out in the next episode. So but you won't have had your operation by this point, so you'll be fine.
Yeah, but there's been operations there, so
There's been operations before. Like I had the graphic detail from you, but if people forget how long we've known each other. But I think this is a perfect time to go to a commercial break.
This video is brought to you in association with 7 Million Bikes Podcasts, providing a comprehensive step-by-step service as well as accessing a range of affiliate partnerships to provide you with discounts on your podcasting journey. For a free consultation, the link will be in the description of this video.
So let's talk about one thing that I think separates AEW from all the other promotions that we've talked about, and that is their women's division. I think that their women's division is considerably stronger than any of the other companies that started out that big as well. With WWF, let's face it, it was an absolute S show up until about 2016, and it's been on the go since like the 40s, 50s. And WCW just didn't care. ECW again just didn't care. Only ones I would really say was like that cared about their women's division were like, you know, New Japan, Ring of Honor, all those kind of ones. So do you think that's where the AEW is carving out its own legacy? Because some of their matches, yes, they are also very brutal, and they're giving them a chance to show what the women's division can do. But sometimes I think the women's matches are better than the guys from the ones I've seen.
I think why that is because a lot of the female wrestlers they've got are all from the indies. There's no big names that came in. So they've came in going, this is a massive company. This is a complete culture shock. We need to go out and put in a bajillion% to every match we do. We need to make sure that our matches are getting over more than the big main events. Because if we don't, the women's division's just going to put it away and we'll end up being like ECW, WCW, Attitude Era, WWE, and it'll be like matches like that, like the brand panties match, things like that, where they're not actually wrestling. Because as much as I enjoyed those matches as a teenage boy,
or teenage boys,
exactly, but it didn't add any value to the female division. It was like, do you actually care who the women's champion was back then?
No, we did. Most of the time, we didn't even realize there was one.
Exactly.
But it wasn't really until I think Trish Stratus got the belt proper that people started to care about the women's division in WWE at that point. And then you'd maybe have the odd one that would come up, like, you know, Ivory and Victoria, Gail Kim, what were all ones that I thought they could give, like, say, like cruiserweight guys a run for their money. Well, that was sexist thinking at the time, but then again, it was a different time, ladies that are watching. But nowadays, you get ones like Rhea Ripley, and you think she's going to beat the crap out this guy, as she did to Kevin Owens in a recent episode of Raw, which was quite funny. Well, but in that sense, like, but I would say, didn't Paige jump over to AEW?
Yeah, she's there now.
Yeah, she was she was quite a big name over
Mhm.
on the other side. So they have got them. But I think maybe something that might have hurt their credibility a little was the now Michelle Money, who went over to Japan rather than going to AEW, where it looked like it was a dead cert. Do you think maybe that hindered a bit of the credibility? And I'll go with Toner on that one.
I mean, it depends on the kind of the look of it. I mean, AEW, whether you're looking at the women's division or the men's division, it's big. There is a lot on it, including, their kind of women's roster. If you're looking at, there is a lot on it. So I suppose for any kind of female wrestler going over, I mean, one of the things is going to be, are you going to get as much kind of ring time and TV time that you want? And the answer probably a lot of the time, I would think, is going to be either no, or it's never going to be a kind of decent guarantee. Whereas if you're going elsewhere, you're kind of walking into a far smaller roster when you're going to be utilised a lot more. So in something that's kind of followed by a lot of avid fans, you're going to get a lot of kind of time in the ring and a lot of time to kind of perform. I think, my opinion is sometimes that's maybe moving forward what can hinder, AEW, in the sense that if you look at their roster size, it's huge. It's massive. I mean, you look at the amount of people that do nothing, women included, very talented female wrestlers included in that. I'm not just talking about men here.
Yeah.
That for me would probably be a worry, because again, in your comparison with the WCW kind of similarities, then you wonder, is it a kind of backstage thing? Does your face fit?
Yeah.
Because as we know, if your face fits, doesn't matter who you are or who you're up against, you're going to get what you want because your face fits, you're liked. So there's, again, I think perhaps an element of that, the worry of going over and does my face fit. Also, as well, I think for her, to kind of elevate her career, if she does that and then she continues to move on to kind of bigger things and everything else, then it's been a massively worthwhile decision than potentially sitting in AEW and watching it for the house.
Yeah. I've got kind of two more points roughly to talk about when it's in the comparisons, and one of them you're talking about is essentially the bloated squad. That's where I feel there's a WCW comparison to AEW, because they would just buy talent just to piss Vince off because he'd be looking at it. And then they wouldn't do anything with them, or they wouldn't know how to do anything with them. The key example being Bret Hart. With all of that, they didn't know how to utilize them. And then again, if it was any type of ones, they just don't know what to do, and they'll get guys and girls over into their roster, and it just becomes too bloated. And there's always still the talk of, like, for example, Drew McIntyre at the time of this recording, his contract is due up. There's possibility of him going to AEW. When Goldberg left WWE, there was talk of him going to AEW. At the time of this recording, that hasn't materialized either. And you just keep thinking, realistically, with the bloated squad, why would you want to go to AEW? Because, as you've said, Tor, there's a very limited chance that you'll get any type of TV time.
So, sorry to kind of jump in, but I've just Googled the roster size as of right now, and including men and women, active wrestlers, you're at 197.
Holy hell.
And it's listed every day.
Yeah. And they won't be like, they won't be on like, like peanuts. They'll be on funny money. Which is also where I'm feeling there's another comparison to WCW, is that this type of business model in any company, whether it's a small company like Ginger Media Limited or bigger companies like, like sporting companies, for example, Chelsea, over in the UK, that's not a sustainable business model. Even like billionaire football clubs or sports clubs do have to make calls sometimes if they're not going to operate within a kind of a fair play system. Well, and again, WCW were guilty of that. Big money contracts, and then they were happy to just sit about and do nothing. Well, when
The thing is, though,
when everything hit the fan, do you think that's going to could potentially be a downfall for AEW if you don't play their cards right?
I don't think it will be, because if you look at Tony Khan, he has at least 6 times the amount of money that Vince has. He could take this company and like just put in. He could basically take what Vince earns in a year, put that into the company, because he's an investor in the company as well. He doesn't need to say where that money's come from.
Mm.
And even though he's pumping all this money in and it's going out, no matter how much goes out, he can just top it back up because he's the main investor in this company. His money's not going to dry up. Neither's his dad's money going to dry up. So money isn't a problem for them.
Well, his dad was at Fulham, so yeah.
But with this, like this business model of just getting in talent who just sit down and watch, I mean, really, at the end of the day, if you get somebody like Tony Khan saying, come work for us, we'll give you a match every 6 weeks, but we'll pay you upwards of 150,000 a week. And it doesn't matter if you come, you'll get 150 grand a week for sitting at home watching telly.
Mm.
I mean, it's like right now, the main champion in WWE is on a part-time contract. He's making upwards of 10 million a year.
Yep, and at the time of this record, and at the time of this
7 matches.
At the time of this recording, it's been revealed that he's actually going to be going on a even more reduced schedule, and will still be making that money, if not more.
Yep, and that's right now. It's 7 matches for the year.
Mm.
There's 12 pay-per-views or premium live events. Sorry, There's 12 of them a year. Plus, you want to see the champion every week. But you can't fault him. I mean, he's got to a place where he can sit down and take a part-time and get this money.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to take that deal, you're stupid.
Oh,
it's a fantastic deal. Anybody would jump at that chance.
Definitely.
But it doesn't give people what they want. Whereas at the opposite end of the scale, you've got AEW. Their champions are there every week. They're fighting almost every week. I mean, MJF doesn't fight every week, but he's there every week. He's there at every single show. He still does independent shows. He still does other events. He's there every single week. He's not making the Roman Reigns money, but he's doing the same job for that company. He's the face of this company. And he's running with it. His promos have increased so much since they gave him the championship. I mean, I've followed a lot of his stuff on the indies, and people were comparing him to The Miz, and it's like, I don't see that.
I think it's purely a look.
Aye, but it's like he started wrestling from a young age. I mean, he's only in his 20s just now. He's late 20s just now, and he's at the top of a company because he's put in the work, and they've seen that he needs to be where he is right now. And it wasn't just Tony Khan; it was all the executives. It was the Young Bucks. It was Kenny. It was Cody. Even Chris Jericho's going, this guy needs to be the champion. We can't keep putting it on me or John or CM Punk. We need to bring up the smaller guys who have been with us since day one. And that's where they've got to. They are starting to push like the big old WWE names. they're starting to push the Kenny and the Young Bucks away. They're there every week. You see them, but their stories are becoming mid-card now.
Yeah.
And it's the people that were there since day one that they've built up, and now they're in the main events. Whereas with ECW, everybody was a main eventer.
Yeah.
You could put anybody in the main event. And that's another comparison that AEW with WCW, ECW have. You could put anybody on that roster in the main event, and it'll be a 3, 4, 5-star match, depending on who it was that was in it. But you can guarantee it won't be any less than a 3-star match.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was something that I was thinking about when it came to, in terms of building the rosters. What do you think that, Toner, in terms of that, do you think ECW were as good as building their stars up as AEW, or do you think AEW is better? Do you think they're worse? What would you think about that, in terms of building their talent rather than just buying it in?
No, I mean, I think in terms of building their talent, I think just now, to look at it, I think ECW is better. However, wait another 5 years and see where it's going. I think as of now is when we're talking about it 100%, because you look at the names that came out of ECW and what they went on to do, but look at how long ago that was. I think now, wait to see over the next kind of 5-10 years where a lot of these guys go. And I agree with what Kev's saying in regards to the money situation and that there, but the biggest worry is if he ever decides, because it's not a sustainable business to continue to drape money into a company. He's got the money to do it. But if at any point he ever decided, do you know what, I don't know how big I am in doing this now, and wanted to back it off or walk away, I was just kind of Googled up in some of the salaries that gets paid there. I mean, Moxley, 6 million. Jericho, Omega, 3 million. Dustin Rhodes.
Is that per year?
Yeah. Dustin Rhodes, 2 million a year. And there's loads of that. So even when you look at kind of daft things as well, I mean, they were looking at bringing out their video game. AEW was due to be released last December, and it's been delayed. I think the talk is that they're saying now it's going to be out soon.
It's October or November. It's due out. Yeah. It has actually got a release date.
Do you think maybe the delay around that is more they're waiting to see if CM Punk's back?
I think he's in the game.
There were always says at the time that he was coming in the game. There was never. They says there wasn't a question. He was a big name for them. So whether he was in it, he was always going to be coming in. But I just mean then when you look at kind of sustainable business wise, you wonder how long is it going to run where they're happy for it to run at a loss.
Yeah.
Because you can't, you can sink money into it. He's got the money to do it. But how long is any business happy to go? I mean, there will be business planned for. He knows he's going in and he's going to lose money and happy to lose money for X, Y, and Z amount of years. But I think that's where the growing roster. I wondered if it was, that saying, fling shit at a wall and see what sticks.
Aye.
And you get that kind of feeling like, you know what, we'll bring all them in because what we're doing in bringing them in is we're keeping them off WWE, we're keeping them off any rivals, and we'll see if we can get them to work here. I genuinely think that maybe not this year, but in coming times, there'll be a cull like there was at WWE. I think you'll start to see folk getting dropped, contracts not getting renewed, and away they go. And then they'll have their kind of base of what works and what they know works, and then talent that they want to build on. So I think just now it's probably smart because we keep all them away from the likes of WWE so they can't be used. We're happy to pay them here whilst we're building our brand and whilst we're building everything here. They're not going to be going and doing any work at rival companies.
Well, the thing with all these people, they can actually still do all their indie shows. They can still work in Ring of Honor. They've got they've got their contracts with AAA. They've got their contracts with New Japan and even Impact. So even though their roster size is massive, they can send these people out to these companies if need be. So it's not like they're not working every single week, but they have the opportunity. Whereas with like WWE, their roster size has significantly dropped in the past year, but there's still tons of people. If you look, and it's like they've not been on TV or anything for like 6 months. Are they even still employed?
But do you think that's where AEW's got like their kind of unique selling point over WWE? Because they've really got WWE, NXT. Well, and as Toner stated, AEW has a lot more options for sending their talent out to different places. Do you think that's maybe what could be a bigger draw for them, and also maybe a way of them potentially recouping any losses because they can essentially loan them out to other companies? Like
I don't think it's not going to work in part of the way where they're loaning them out and they're going to be getting their contracts paid. I mean, they're still couping that money. I think it's, it'll stop any ring rust. It'll keep them, for the fans that follow that, very active and very known on it. Keeps them kind of working. And then, in regards to the way WWE does it with NXT, when they feel it's the right time to step up, they'll then go and step them up, which is smart overall to do. But there is just, because for me, I think it's just there's a lot of big names there. And I think that's the difference. I think if it was, you had your kind of 20, 25 kind of bigger names and then mid-carders and then you're going lower down, I think it'd be different. I think it's just, there was a point where every other week they were coming out and announcing another big name. It actually became disappointing when you turned it on and there was no big name announced because you were that prepared for the big name to come out.
Yeah, and the second that there's any rumblings of dissatisfaction with a superstar in WWE, the first thing that happens is a meme is put up of them in front of the "Is All Elite."
Yes.
Well, when anything happens,
I've been thinking. What we're trying to say is AEW, like ECW.
Yeah.
See, the more we've been talking about it, it's actually beginning to make me think that it's more like TNA when they started. Because they had all this money getting pumped into them. And it was Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Jarrett, and they were getting everybody. And look at the names that they got to start building up. They had their smaller guys who were there from day one, and if you look at some of them now, they're like some of the biggest names in the industry right now.
AJ Styles, big one.
AJ, Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, Frankie Kazarian, James Storm, Bobby Roode. They were like the 6 main guys that were there from day one, working every single week.
Yeah.
And now they're like the highest you can get.
Yeah, and their women's division wasn't too shabby either.
Yeah.
We think was it Gorilla Kong? Her name was what?
Yeah.
What? And she took no shit. She was terrifying.
I'd have washed her dishes if she asked me.
Well, I would be morally, emotionally, and physically degraded. And I would just take it. We wouldn't bother. What?
I mean, if I was to get degraded like that, if I was to get degraded like that, I'd walk about with a constant erection.
I know you would, because you have before. Right. So we'll come.
But I can see the comparisons with like early on.
Yeah.
Like pre Hulk Hogan.
TNA. Yeah. Pre-Hogan. Definitely.
So just don't bring Hogan into AEW because that'll be its downfall.
Just don't bring Hogan into anything. If there's one thing we've learned, what about that?
Unless it's a firing squad.
He'll not be able to walk for that. He can't walk for that.
That's an easy target.
Or a group of Mexicans.
So it'd be quite literally a sitting duck. But yeah, the final question that I kind of had around this was AEW's been around now, at the time of this recording, 5 years. But ECW was the kind of 5 year itch as well. But we know which way ECW went. Do you realistically see AEW following a similar path to ECW?
No.
Me, personally, I think potentially. Because it depends how long is somebody happy sitting there pumping money in. It's not the same background structure as ECW, which is to its credit. But again, it's just how long is one guy prepared to sit there and fire money in? And it's without kind of giving the comparison taken away, it is very much like football clubs.
Yeah.
You know, you see football clubs kind of rise up because they've got an owner that's literally playing real life football manager. But when they either their circumstances change, their business interests change, whatever else, they decide, right, now is the time that I want to walk away and do something else. So we'll put it up for sale, we'll let somebody else come in. Somebody else comes in, they don't have that same money, that same backing, you know, that was had with a kind of predecessor. I think if he continues to stay and he stays there for another 5-10 years, could it be business kind of structurally sound? 100%. And it could continue to grow and continue to build, and it's getting spoke about in another 50 years' time about the rise of it and everything it's done. But again, that would be my worry if you were there. It's how long is one guy prepared to go there? Whereas especially now with the kind of sailing all that at WWE, you know, that's a lot more stable and sound in the background than, and I would call AEW its only real proper rival.
Yeah, I would say so as well. But Kev, you think that it could survive? What even? Do you think it could survive even without Tony Khan?
Personally, it could survive no matter who's in charge. They've got to where they have been right now by building up smaller people. It's took them 5 years to get to here. TNA, when they started, took them 10 years to get to a spot where it's like they didn't need the original people.
Yeah.
Jeff Jarrett was gone, Jerry Jarrett was gone, a new company had come in and bought it. And it was still going. And then, obviously, they got Hogan and Bischoff in, and that basically turned it into WCW 2.0, which we know doesn't work. The fact that these people that have built up a company and then ruined it, they're not working anymore.
Yeah.
They do appearances here and there.
They're podcasts.
Exactly. So there's nobody that could come in and say, right, we'll do this, we've got all this money, we'll get all these people in, we'll bring in another NWO type thing.
Yeah.
So they've got to the 5 year mark and there hasn't been any downs really. It's been slowly building. It's not been a meteoric rise to the top. They've middled the entire way. I mean, they started big with All Out, and then they just sort of leveled out after that. And now they're getting to a point where it's like they're building up and building up. And they are like one of the only rivals to WWE. Ring of Honor is, again, it's more independent, it's more gritty. Whereas Impact, again, they've had to try and build themselves up. So they're going down the independent route, getting independent people in. They've still got some big names coming in to help, but it's not people that are going to devastate the company like what's happened. But they still have an established following, as does AEW. So no matter what happens, they have got the fan base there, and they're not going anywhere. And the AEW fans are brutal compared to like some of the other fans. I mean, you get these like bitter AEW fans, that are just complete hatred of WWE. And I've discussed things with people asking why they hate WWE so much, And I can understand their points because it's the same things that we're not enjoying about it.
Yeah.
It's like championship runs going for like 3, 4, 5 years now. It's like we want to see titles change hands. That's why we watch.
Yeah.
But we know as long as Roman Reigns has a contract, he'll be the champion.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it said in the reports. He's taking the belts to Hollywood with him if he gets to Hollywood. So I think we've had we've had a lot of kind of debate about it. We've had some good points brought all round. So the straight answer of do I think AEW is the new ECW? I would say no. I would say it's more complicated than that. I would say it's taken bits of previous rivals to WWE and have kind of amalgamated them into this one company. They've taken some of the blood and the grit of ECW and their, shall we say, ultras fan base, kind of similar to what a Green Brigade is for Celtic. Toner will get that. They've got the relatively solid women's division and steady kind of middling rise of a TNA. And sadly, I think they're taking from WCW, that's where they're taking the most negative points. Whereas it's by stars, egos collide, backstage politics, and bust ups.
Yep.
So I would personally think that if they could cut the WCW crap out and kind of stick with what's working with them just now, on the ECW and kind of TNA models, then I personally think AEW could be one of the main rivals of WWE for a considerable future. However, if Tony Khan does decide that he's done his time, or if there's any outside factors, like for example, a Roman Abramovich Chelsea situation, as we've had, where something happened and then it was like, okay, he's got to get the hell out of there, then I personally think AEW would be up the shitter. So I would say the next 5 years are going to be crucial for AEW. In terms of all that, they need to cut the crap, get the egos in check, build up their own talented stars like they're doing, and pray to God, whatever God will listen, that Tony Khan does not up sticks and leave. Well, guys, it's been quite an interesting one for me, and I have to say, I don't think I've been too high. I think I've been able to keep relatively stable. I think I've been all right.
Pretty much.
Yep. Well, we shall end it there for tonight. To anybody that's watching, leave a wee comment. What do you guys think? Do you think AEW is straight up the new ECW? Do you think it's an amalgamation like I think, or do you think that I'm talking bullshit? Let us know. We want the engagement. So until next time, Toner, thank you so much for coming on. Kev, as always, thank you. I've been Andrew Durning. This has been Ross Ginger. Good night.
See ya.
Cheers.